I want to talk about two things in this video. One is how to prepare somebody else's funeral who you super loved and you have input in terms of how the thing turns out. Second thing I want to talk about is how you prepare for your own funeral. And frankly, thinking well about that second one, how you prepare for your own, influences thinking well about the first one, how you prepare for others and the people you love. So here's the thing. When I do a funeral, and I have done a lot of funerals, when I am on the receiving end of a funeral, that is somebody who I loved has died and I'm being walked through that by an officiant or whatever, there are a couple things that immediately come to mind that you got to sort out. And I think the biggest of them is this. Who's the funeral for? Is the funeral primarily meant to honor and celebrate the life of a person we all loved who is gone? Or is the point of that funeral to help people move on? Now, most people are going to say both, which means the question then is, how do we balance that out? What is the point of emphasis? In answer to that question, I would just throw out this one detail. On the one side of the equation is a whole bunch of people who have to move forward with life and do things. On the other side of the equation is the only person at the funeral who really isn't attending the funeral. So yes, we want to honor each other and celebrate each other, but really, a funeral is not just a celebration of me when I die. It's a chance for me to give one more gift to everybody I love. And that gift isn't like whatever stuff I leave behind us, but I mean, that's nice too. The gift is, hey, here's one more person you really cared about and who really cared about you back. And I am now, well, I was a living, now I am a dying reminder of the fact that we are all mortal. And in a way, in this old saying, the dead person says to the living, where I am, you soon will be. Where you are, I once was. And there's this connectedness that happens, this thought process that is triggered by death, and you just can't miss it. And so there's that gift that we have the opportunity to give others when we pass away, just automatically. Everybody we love has to think about the point of life and who they are and what they're doing. Thank you, everybody I love who's died. I've tried to make use of every single one of your passing to honor your memory by thinking hard about who I am and what I'm going for and life and death and all of that stuff. I haven't wasted those opportunities. And I know you're not actually watching this video because of how you're dead, but thank you, everyone I've loved who's passed away. But additionally, there's also the chance for you to give the gift to all of those people of release, forgiveness, healing, grace. It is so strange how forgiving everybody is at a funeral. Only very few people get into a funeral situation and are like, I'm still mad at that guy. I'm furious. No, you've seen this, right? Like almost nobody who dies is a bad guy. Have you ever gone to a funeral of a horrible woman? No, they're always a saint. Automatically, death changes our perception of the real and imagined slights we've suffered at the hands of other people. And I think that's a good thing. One of the things that a really smart friend of mine said much more eloquently than I do, but that I say clumsily, is basically this. If we're all in the mood to forgive and overlook now that this beloved woman, this beloved man has passed away, why don't we just live like that? Why don't we get that stuff squared up before? Why don't we see if we can make this a little bit contagious? Maybe most of these things that we're really troubled by are very trivial. And I understand there's some very, very deep injuries and awful things that people do to other people. And I understand this is not as simple as just, let's forgive everything and move on. But also maybe it's kind of as simple as that most of the time. That mood is going to be present at just about any funeral that you help plan. And it's pretty awesome that that mood is going to be present at my funeral and yours. Because guess what? I have wronged people. I've tried to square up most of those accounts. Some of those accounts are embarrassing to try to square, and I haven't done it as well as I could. As much as it's up to me, I don't think I have made those as better as I could. And that's tough to dig open, the crypt, the archives, dig through the old ledger and go back and straighten that stuff out. And I'm going to keep trying to do right by that. But one of the things I do find encouragement in is I see how people are at funerals. They're forgiving. They see the humanity of a person. Well, death got him. Death's going to get me. I guess we're kind of in the same boat. I guess we all do stupid stuff. A gift that we can give each other on our way out the door is that spirit, that tone of mutual forgiveness. And if we help plan a funeral carefully, or even plan our own carefully, we can really lean into that and accentuate that and further give away this gift and actually bring healing, not just as people recover from losing us or we recover from losing somebody we loved, but help people to be better than they were before the funeral, to fix stuff that looked like it was going to be unfixable and that people were going to take to the grave with them. It happens, and this is a cool opportunity. So all of that is in the service of answering the question, who's this for? Remembering and celebrating the dead, or serving the needs of the living? I tend to think that the service is better tilt this way. And in the action of serving the needs of the living, we will remember and celebrate and love and appreciate those who are gone. Because it is kind of a mutually beneficial thing, isn't it? Like if you went to a funeral, like 50 times in your life, let's say, and at all of those funerals, everybody's like, well, they died, whatever. Now let's talk about our feelings. You'd be like, bummer. We don't care about death. Like as soon as somebody dies, they're out of the game. They don't matter anymore. We just move on, whatever. Bummer. That's how it's going to be for me. I guess we don't remember our dead. But because we do, well, the benefit of that is, hey, we're with you, dead friend, in life and in death, and we're going to miss you, and nothing will be the same without you. We cannot have this thing that we've built, this reality we live in, without you. You're irreplaceable. No one else can take that spot. We'll make new friends, but not you. There's that. But also then, it reminds us, hey, while we're still alive here, we're irreplaceable. We matter in this circle of people, and this is important. And so again, it kind of holds up a mirror. It has that reflexive property of making us think about not just our own mortality, as we talked about a moment ago, but of our own value, of the importance of the opportunities to do good and redemptive and meaningful things while we still draw breath in this life. So you think that through on the front end, and what I hope comes out of that is some kind of service that is enormously redemptive and filled with grace and celebration and the easiest laughs you're ever going to get, by the way. If you're running one of these things, oh my goodness, it's a funeral. People are just dying for any form of levity. You don't have to say anything funny at all. Jesus was a carpenter, but I think it was harder for him back then because he didn't have Home Depot. See how you didn't laugh? But if that was a funeral, you would have loved it because that would have been the funniest thing you ever heard. It really is a pretty amazing and unique environment. Now, one quick note on the whole term funeral. I think funeral usually is the term for a situation where you have a body and somebody actually has died recently, and we're kind of hurrying to make this service happen because the body is going to be with us in the service, and then we're going to go actually bury that body. Funerals tend to be a little more explosive emotionally. It's fresh. It's often a surprise. This is difficult. When we say memorial service, that's usually the term we use for a service where someone is chosen to be cremated, or just circumstances dictated that we had to wait a long time before we could do this thing. And so we've had some time to process. Either way, I think this stuff is a pretty good basic structure. Something like this is what I do when I do a funeral. I'm not saying I'm the gold standard, but this could be generically helpful for you. On the front end, some kind of music, a prelude, get people in, make them comfortable. Noise cover is important. At a funeral, if everything's quiet, it's like that video that the Oral Knots did on the internet where they took all of the sound out of the award ceremony at the end of Star Wars Episode 4, and you can hear like coughs and burps, and there's no music, and it's just really, really uncomfortable. But with the noise cover, it sets a tone, it sets a mood for that scene, and it feels triumphant and victory over the evil empire, and all our friends are together. Same thing here. Be smart about what music you have playing on the front end. Don't leave that decision to just whoever comes up with it. And whether you're the type of people who want to have a service where, Ethel with the blue hair is playing something on the organ or the piano, or whether you want to play some music that you picked, just be thoughtful about it. I did one service with a family where a person passed away, and they came in with a little bit of a plan I'd asked them to put together, and they wanted the prelude to be, I can't remember the name of the song, but it's by Sheryl Crow and Kid Rock. And I put your picture away. It's about an affair. And I was like, I don't know if you guys have listened to this, but no, I'm going to use the pastoral veto on that one hard. We'll go with like something nice. That's not the story we want to tell. It's not the mood we want to set. But something that's thoughtful on that front end, it enables people to sneak in, sneak out, have quiet conversations they need to. It's more important than you figure is the point. And you can put good thought into how you set the room up, how you set the music up to set the mood and the tone that you want for this particular event. After that, I think it's great to have the officiant jump up and not just say welcome, but say thank you. especially if that officiant knew the person who's died. Well, and they had the opportunity to paraphrase the words of the deceased to effectively give a blessing to the people in the room. If it's your funeral, who's coming up? That's coming up. Get to know your officiant. Put together a blessing. Maybe write it out so that your officiant can stand up and be like, so glad you're here. We're here to honor the memory of Matt Whitman. And he specifically wanted me to say this to everyone who's here. And then have it be nice. Of course, have it be nice. Like a legitimate old school blessing. Turn a nice phrase. Do your best work. Bless the people who have blessed you with, again, that concept of one more gift, one more opportunity to serve and love and leave the right taste in the mouth with the people who you've valued and who've valued you back. So some kind of blessing from the officiant and also some kind of explanation of what we're here to do. A lot of times it's just assumed that everybody knows what's going on at a funeral. Do we? Really? We don't think about death that much. It's kind of weird. Instead, I think maybe have somebody get up and be like, hey, we're doing this to memorialize the one who's gone and to celebrate them. We're also doing this to bring about healing. And this is where God fits into the thing. And yes, all of my funeral services, I'm a Christian. Like the God thing, the eternal life thing, the grace, forgiveness, gospel thing, it really fits in for me. If you are coming from a different perspective, cool. We can get along great, and you can take what I'm saying and morph it to make sense for where you're at and what you think about stuff. But for me, that goes right on the front end. Here's what we're going for, and here's why. Then after that, I'll usually do an opening prayer. Then we'll do some kind of singing together, a hymn, a song, whatever. The family usually picks good stuff there. Then we get into the really delicate part. This is the part you're going to nail, my friends. This is the memory section. I usually put it before a message and after a prayer, singing or something. Everybody's settled in now. The initial nerves are over. And let me just start with what I strongly recommend you do not do. And that is open mic time. I did this when I first started doing funerals repeatedly, and I didn't get burned by it the first couple of times. But the third time, third, fourth, something like that, I did. I had a guy who was immediate, hand up, yep, I have some memories I want to share. And he comes up, I only had one mic, so I had no way to take that away from him or fix it. And he just starts talking, and he was intoxicated. He said crazy things. He embarrassed the family. He embarrassed the dead person. Well, I mean, if the dead person could hear what was going on. He started to drop a bomb that was going to fundamentally change the memory of this person forever. It would have changed lives. And so I just ran over and we're done. I was just absolutely rude. I removed the microphone from his hand and he didn't like it. And that was really awkward as well. But then stupidly, I kept going. I was like, anybody else? Let's salvage this thing. And this lady who is covered in black, like people used to do for funerals, I guess, or like they do in movies still, covered in black. She comes up and I'm like, oh, what have I done? I'm in the wrong line of work. She takes the microphone and immediately makes the entire funeral about her. Turns out she knew the guy for like a week or something for a while, one time, like in her 20s in the 1980s or something. And she also wants people to know that she lost her aunt last year. And she wants people to know that things have been difficult at work. And she just turns it into like why she's sad about things and how this death is just one more thing in a long litany of things she's sad about and fake grief and then weird, bizarre poetry. And finally, same thing. I gotta take the mic away from you. Let me just save you all kinds of pain, my friends. Just don't do it. Instead, construct a proposal. Pick somebody in advance who can handle their business. Have them read the written obituary that you put in the newspaper, the one that the family crafts beautifully. Then have them share some memories. Maybe they gather memories in the days leading up to the service from all kinds of people, and the family has a chance to maybe review that even a little bit, and then have them share those memories and create a profile for people who maybe didn't know the deceased very well, and create the opportunity for people who did to be like, yeah, that was her. That captured the essence. That was beautiful. I so appreciate that. You crowdsource it. That can be a great thing. Look, if someone is like a widow or a widower, that's a fresh title for them. If they want to get up and talk, that can be pretty difficult. Ultimately, that's up to you. It's up to them. I find that it is usually pretty helpful to have somebody who is grieving but has just a tiny bit of distance and who can handle the emotional pressure of that moment and bear that burden on behalf of their family and the people who they love. Maybe there's some kind of video or slideshow or something. A lot of times those get very long and work better in the potluck or the whatever you do afterwards to get together and spend time reminiscing. After you do the memories, we usually do another hymn. Then we do some kind of message where we pick a part of the Bible that really talks about death and mortality and life and the grace of God. And we look at that together and we think about it. And then we wrap up that message. Those are usually not long. Try to keep those pretty tight. When I do them, I try to relate them closely to the things that the deceased's life demonstrated in a positive way, of course. And I'll try to draw on stuff like, hey, Lydia was like this. Daryl was like this. And that is this is where he got it. Look at how Jesus is. Look what's going on in the text. And if you got a Christian who is being memorialized, look, you understand, we're weird. We all got these weird different versions of Christianity. I understand it can get strange in a lot of ways. A whole lot of history here. People have different opinions. But the bottom line is this. If someone is what you would technically call a Christian, they think there's a God. They think that Jesus is the centerpiece of the hope that humanity has. And Jesus' death and resurrection is the centerpiece of why that person going to their grave could go with any kind of courage, because they believed that there's a God on the other side of this thing who has something bigger in mind than just living and dying and that's it, but something eternal and redemptive in mind for us. That's a big deal to them. And whoever you got officiating this thing, or if you are speaking at a funeral, you got to hit that. And if you're somebody who's going to one of these and you're like, I don't think there's a God, like I will go out of courtesy, you got to understand that even if you ultimately reject the stuff that they believed, this is the most cherished, precious, important thing that they wanted to convey to you. Not all of the little details and all the little arguments and how to vote and who did what. Like all of that seems like a big deal when you're living. But the biggest thing they wanted to convey to you, person who sees this differently than me and isn't into it, is this, the hope that they had in the face of death because of the work of God, specifically because of the work of Jesus, and a tremendous grace that you can give, even in disagreement, even if you ultimately reject those things, is to hear it and internalize it deeply, because that is the number one thing that if they were still sitting there, they would want to articulate to everybody in that room. Make sure your officiant gets that so that they can represent those things clearly. After we get done with that message, we usually do another hymn. Then we'll do some kind of closing scripture reading, a closing prayer, and then, again, some nice noise cover music so people can get out, and a clear set of instructions for where people go next so that we don't wrap up this thing with a bunch of bumbling and awkwardness, but instead a very smooth transition into kind of privately swapping memories and having a laugh. And the process of moving on begins when the music to walk out of that funeral or memorial service fires up. So putting thought into that is important too. So to review, we're going to have opening music, a welcome, a prayer thing, a blessing. If possible, we're going to do an opening prayer. We're going to have a hymn. We're going to do a memory thing where we do not give the microphone to people. Do not do it. Plan carefully on this. Maybe some more singing, then maybe some kind of message with scripture. Then we're going to have another hymn, closing scripture reading, prayer, and a thoughtful way for people to get out of the room and to the next thing that they need to go do. If you are planning your own funeral, something that is really important to process through is how much the thing costs. It's really expensive to die. And I understand not everybody's got a ton of cash on hand, but there are ways to plan in advance so that you don't saddle everybody else with the cost of your funeral. Look, we love you. If you die and you didn't pay for your funeral, we're going to figure it out and we're going to be okay. But I hear horror stories. I see horror stories all the time of that $18,000 spent on a funeral being the kind of thing that puts friction on a family, puts tension on a family rather, creates friction. And now instead of you giving them one last gift, you're giving them one last obligation. Look, if you're going to die and you don't have money to do anything about it, it's cool. Just get through this process and wring every drop out of life that you get to, and don't worry about that if it's not an option. But if it is and you have time to plan. Pick a tombstone, buy a plot, pay for them. Maybe don't pick what gets written on there. Let somebody who loves you very much pick that, but handle all of the other stuff. Pick who the officiant of your funeral is going to be. Even if you're like 25 and you're not anywhere close to dying, just pick somebody. Like, hey, You do these things. Don't pick like your buddy who you worked with for a few years in college because he was funny. Don't get that guy. Get like somebody who actually does this thing, and then talk with them, get to know them so that they have a sense of who you are and where you're coming from and what makes you tick. And so they can represent you. And so that they're in a position where everybody who's at your service knows that officiant is able to a little bit speak on behalf of this person who's gone and pass along blessings, encouragement, love, grace, all of that stuff. If you're going to have people share memories, maybe think about who you want to do that for you. Maybe make a plan on that front. I have a guy I talked to him about, 8-10 years ago. The deal still stands. That's who I want to talk because I think he's built the right way emotionally and mentally, and I think he gets me, and I think he'll show concern for people I love, and I think he'll do a great job. I already said that. It's oddly emotional to think about your own funeral. I think that's okay. There's also relational stuff that we want to take into account here. I touched on that stuff a little bit earlier. I'm going to touch on that more in my next video on how to prepare to die when we start to get into more of the relational stuff. So far, we've talked about getting your house in order, how to put together a funeral the right way, how to get your affairs all lined up so that you're good and ready to die. And the next thing we got to talk about is those people we keep referencing, your family, your friends, the people you love, your enemies. What do we do with all of that so that you're ready to die and so that they, though they may not want you to die, are as prepared as they can be for you passing on? That's what we'll talk about next time. If you have questions or thoughts or stuff that I didn't think of or stuff that I said that's stupid, throw it in the comments. I'll try to pay attention and engage a little bit on this one because I know we've all had different experiences, and I know this is a delicate thing that we really do want to get right. All right. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour. Let's do this again soon.